Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red. As is our way in the summer, we're going to be hearing from different people connected to Nottingham Forest, away from the day-to-day madness of transfer news. With that in mind, I'd like to welcome back Simon Bristow to the show. As you'll know him as Our Glorious Banners on Twitter. He was with us a year ago talking about his book Free From Desire, which told the story of the promotion season in photos he took from the stands. And he's back with a second book titled Risen, on the back of the incredible highs and lows of this season or last season, depending on when the cut-off actually is. Simon, how you doing?
Good, thank you, Matt. Yeah, lovely to be back with you, and looking forward to chatting about a few more photos.
Is it this season or last season we're talking about?
I think it's fixtures come out. Maybe that could be the cut-off when they come next season.
Yeah.
They tend to reset the tables, isn't it? So we're on the cusp of it, that's for sure.
That's true. We're recording this the day before the fixtures come out. So by the time people are watching or listening to this, then I think we're talking about last season. So like we said, the book last year, Free From Desire, flew off the shelves. You had to do 3 print runs. You were going mad and it's like a total mad hatter for a few weeks. You raised a lot of money for charity. What made you come back and do it all again?
Yeah, well, I think I should start by just saying a massive thank you for everybody that bought a copy of the first book, because despite the headaches and the logistical challenges, looking back on it, it was an incredible experience, very humbling that people wanted to buy a book of my very dodgy photos. And I think we got close to about £50,000 raised in the end, which was split between Forza Garibaldi and the Robin Hood Fund at the time. I've mentioned it at the start of book 2, but I always swore to people, literally on some occasions, that I wouldn't do a second book because it was fun, but it was a bit of a challenge at times. We're not set up to do book sales. I'm not Amazon or anything like that. So most of it was being done out of my back room. And I guess, it's Greg Mitchell that is to blame for book 2. He's harassed me
for a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. He harassed me for weeks and months, and it was just the way this season ended again. And I just kind of felt, if we'd finished mid-table, which would have been lovely, I don't think it would have had the same appeal. But the end to the season was kind of epic again. So I just thought, right, I'll do a second one, and then that is it, unless we get to Europe, and then I'll consider it.
So 2 questions off the back of that. Firstly, I assume Greg's going to help do all the packing and loading this time then.
Yeah, because he managed to avoid it last time. So I'm definitely roping him in for that.
The second question, obviously all the money last time was for charity, and I think this is the case this time. Which charities, and how can people get the book before we start going through the photos you've selected?
Yes. So in terms of buying the book, it's available for pre-sale, pre-order on the Forza Garibaldi website. If you go onto Our Glorious Banners social or Forza's social, you'll very quickly find the link and the details. Price is $18.65, again, includes postage and packaging. We are sorting international orders as well. So I know you have listeners around the world now, Matt. So if anyone's in Australia or the US, we are working through those. So just get in touch directly. And in fact, the US Supporters Club are about to launch. So hopefully by Monday, will have launched their kind of order system as well. So they're going to do a bulk order and then distribute them locally for me, which is great. And the charities this time, so again, 50% of it's going to go to Forza, just to help fund everything that those guys are doing, because it's wonderful and we all love it, but it does come at quite a hefty price to do those displays. So keep those guys funded, and hopefully we're going to do 1 or 2 new things as well with some of the money that we get in. And then the other 50% is going to go to the PDSA this time, which is the leading veterinary charity. Bit of a personal one for me. Getting a bit choked up by it. It's in the book. Read it in the book. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now, but it's a personal choice for me this time around. So anyone who buys a book will be doing me a big favour.
I'll put the link to the book in the comments for the description as well, so people can check it out. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you can't just on iTunes, you can't see the photos. So if you go to our Twitter account, I'll put a plug in for that at the end as well. All the photos will be there. I'll post them so you can see this as we go along, so you're not going to be missing out. But I appreciate this is more of a visual episode than normal. And as Simon said, we do have lots of international listeners now: Australia, America, Slovenia, Norway. So hello to everyone who listens from around the world. So what we're going to do, like last time, is Simon sent me I think it's 8 photos from the book that go through the season, and I'll just ask him about those and questions off the back of it about as the season went along and how he was feeling, kind of similar to the rest of us were feeling, I guess. But first photo is this is West Ham at home. Obviously, you mentioned Risen. You can see Risen in the background. What made you pick this photo?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know how last season when we did this, and the kind of the trajectory of the book was starting very low, and then it kind of rose and rose and rose and rose and went up to Wembley. I think the story of this season is a bit more like up and down, peaks and troughs. And this was a real kind of high starting point. Yeah, we've been to Newcastle the week before. That was great, brilliant day out. But in a way, kind of came away a bit deflated of like, oh, actually, this is going to be pretty tough. And this first home game felt like a real start to the season for us. Almost like at the time, we all knew that home form was going to be all important, which obviously is how the season played out. And it's just a glorious photo. Obviously, it just encapsulates that moment really lovely. The warmth, it kind of comes through the huge card display that Forza had sorted the day before, and it was really smart from them because it played back to their first display, which people probably won't remember, but it was after the Marinakis takeover. So what's that, 2016, 2017? And they'd done a very small, by their standards now, display in the Trent End that said the rise of the Garibaldi. And we saw this as kind of a moment of the end point of that first journey. So we have risen and we are back in the Premier League. And this is where I took the inspiration for the name of book 2 as well. And it just felt like a glorious day, sea of red, and a great start to the home games of our Premier League season.
Did you have any challenges this year? I remember asking you last year about getting into the ground, taking the photos. Obviously, the Premier League's a bit more picky. It's very much more salubrious. It's a different world, really. I didn't realise what a different world it was. Was it actually harder to get all the photos taken this year?
I had one amusing episode at Man United, Old Trafford. Bizarrely, we'd obviously played them in the league. Was that just after Christmas, wasn't it? And I walked in, no problem. And then the cup game, for some reason, I had the same equipment with me, and they weren't having any of it, and they were trying to send me away and leave my bag and my camera at some kind of locker system. And I was just like asking for more and more senior stewards and just saying, but it's a fixed lens camera, there's no issue with this, you let me in. And eventually someone with a bit of sense let me in. I did buy a new camera last summer, preempting that it might be more difficult, which is more slimlined and goes in a pocket, and occasionally I've hidden it in my hand as we're getting searched. So I'm giving away my secrets now. I've got no chance next year. It's on the whole, it's been fine. When you do get stopped and asked what it is, stewards tend to be quite sensible it's not got a massive zoom lens. I'm not taking photos of stuff that's going on the pitch, and they just let me carry on with it, basically.
True. I think we should, probably make it clear they're not match photos. That's Richie Sumter's domain. I know we said this year, but they're fan photos taken from within the stands by yourself, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a good point and a good moment to just shout out Richie. I know he's got an extended team now as well. Premier League has allowed him to get some more people involved with the match day stuff. And it's just brilliant. I think the stuff that they create on a match day is absolutely sensational. And if you look at what other clubs do, it's nowhere near the quality that Richie and I think it's Amy and Josh are the two guys that work with him. I think their stuff is really outstanding. So we're very lucky to have those guys working for Forest and producing great content.
True. I might ask Richie to come back and do another one, actually, as obviously the iconic photo at the end of the season of the Arsenal game. So try and get Richie on to talk us through that. Now, the second photo, you quite rightly mentioned the trajectory of this season was, very much more up and down than the straight rocket line we saw last season. And none more so than Leicester away.
Yeah.
Absolute disaster. And for you, this photo sums that game up.
Yeah. You probably won't thank me for this, but here's Dave Marples.
It is, yeah.
Who I stand next to at most away games. And yeah, sadly, he was in the right place at the right time for me on this night. It was a horrible night. We'd been on a pretty bad run of form. It felt like one of those, it was an early kind of make or break type game because they've been in dreadful form as well. And I think probably less so for us because we all hoped that nothing stupid would happen with Steve Cooper. But for them, I think if they'd lost that night, they would have sacked Brendan Rodgers. And so actually the sliding doors moment was, thank God they didn't lose, because if they got rid of him earlier in the season, they might have got a better manager in at the time and been not part of the relegation battle. But yeah, just wasn't a great night. Their fans, desperate for a rival with us that we're not really giving them, which gets them more and more angry. And it was a classic head in the hands type night. Taiwo hit the post early on, and then just everything seemed to go bad from there, and wasn't a pleasant experience. But again, referenced in the book that the away fans that night did kind of make a bit of a stand in terms of singing Steve Cooper's name for 20 plus minutes in the second half. And I think it probably did have an impact of what then played out in the days following that game, where there was a bit of rumour, or quite a lot of rumour, about if we change manager, other names being touted. We know that the ownership and the board tend to kind of take note of fan sentiment. And I think that night we played a role in ensuring we stuck by the manager and kept him in the job and allowed us to go on and do what we did over the rest of the season.
I guess we'll go straight into the next photo then, which it was the next game, wasn't it? It's Villa at home, and they stuck with Cooper, and there was this banner in the lower Bridgeford, which lots of people will have seen. Tell us about this photo.
Yeah, so this is one of my film shots. So I've done more and more stuff on film this year, and I think I'm going to eventually transition to just doing film, just because it's a bit more fun. It's higher risk. You get lots of very dodgy, blurry, dark photos that are completely unusable, but I just love how grainy it is and a bit more real than the digital stuff. So yeah, this is one of the film shots of the display that we did before the Villa game, which kind of was a message of Steve Cooper had his new contract. We were all fully behind that, and here he is, the leader of the Garibaldi. There was accompanied by the picture of him that's just up to the right of this shot, and then down the other end we had the text banner that was kind of saying, look, this is just the start of the journey, let's get to work and up the performance level on the pitch and off the pitch, which we all did. And it was a good result that night. 1-1 might not feel like it compared to other home games that we had over the course of the season, but felt like an important one just to kind of move us all forward a little bit.
Yeah, it was a terrible game, wasn't it? Do you think if he'd gone at that point and we'd still stayed up, would it have meant so much? Would the scenes in the stand have been the same, do you think? Or do fans just care about results at the end of the day?
It's a really tough question. I think there is an element that fans only care about results. And I remember all that talk after the Leicester game of would Cooper go, and to the extent of people saying, well, I'm not going to go to games if it's not Steve Cooper, our manager, which I understand and I get. But 4 or 5 games later, when we've got a bit of a winning run with a new manager, you end up coming back. And football's just cutthroat business, right? These people that you build these bonds with and have this affection for, they go and you have a bit of a feeling of loss. But very quickly that feeling is replaced by, oh, okay, we've got this new guy, and actually he's all right, and he's doing this. I'm 100% a Steve Cooper man, and I'm glad that we as a fan base got behind him, and that the ownership and the board took the right decisions, and the couple of times during the season that they did it. I don't think, if we'd stayed up under another manager, I don't think it would have meant as much. I don't think we would have had the scenes that we had at the end of the season with the jubilance and the singing and the dancing and everything else that came with it. I think what Steve Cooper's done, and his backroom staff and all of the players over the couple of seasons, they've created a real unique bond with us as a fan base. And, you know, the stuff that they do behind the scenes and the stuff that they do for the city, I think we are at this kind of unique stage now of, you don't get many managers and groups of people around them that can create this of a fan base. So I think it is a very important relationship that would be very difficult to be replaced. But that's not to say someone else couldn't come in as a manager in the future and get us wins and take us forward more. But yeah, this is a very unique feeling right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like you say, it's such a cutthroat business that it made it feel more special that Forest bucked the trend by hook or by crook. They stuck with him in the end, and the fans had kind of, he'd given them something to believe in, and they'd invested back in Cooper. I think fans, they stuck their neck out in a way by getting behind him so much that they were a part of keeping Forest up. And those scenes at the end, it was a collective celebration because fans had earned their part in keeping up. You saw like the hell at Leeds, where when they went down and they were chanting F off the pitch and go home, or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact wording, but I think that set Forest apart as a different club. And, day also, like, I think Temp said it on the podcast recently, it won't always be like this. And in the back of our minds, I think we always know that Cooper's going to go, because every manager goes.
Yeah.
People would have said 30 years ago, you'll never replace Brian Clough, and you never will. But Cooper brings his own like different sprinkling of magic, and it will be sad when it goes. And I think there's a moment in the way we're all trying to enjoy it as much as we can, certainly while he's here. Talking of him enjoying those special moments, probably after the Liverpool game, this one was the first huge moment against one of the proper big guns against Man City at home, and it kind of slowly turned the tide of the season, I think. Talk us through this photo. I assume this is after Chris Wood scored his only goal and very big goal.
It is, yeah. This is one of the ones, and I think people actually quite like these when they're just a blurry mess.
Yeah.
And this is clearly not very crisp. I was in the moment as much as anyone else, which I maintain I'm always in the moment. I don't stand there and just take photos, because that's not what I want my football experience to be. But this just kind of, in a weird way, encapsulated everything, because it had been building in this game. Like the first half, clearly, Man City are brilliant. What a great team! What a load of great players! They dominate all the stats going. But we'd kind of like had this sense during the first half of, even when they scored their goal, it was like, okay, we're doing quite well here. There's clearly some kind of very tactical plan that's been set out, and the players seem to be delivering it. So we had hope still at half time, despite trailing. And then second half, they squandered a couple of really great chances. Shout out to Erling Haaland for skying it from 3 yards. And it kind of just keep building. And referencing Greg again, I know he'd said post-match, it's like, I knew it was coming. And I think lots of us knew it was coming. And then there was just that brilliant move, and we could all kind of see the pass that needed to be made, and we could see Chris Wood unmarked, and it was all just executed perfectly. And it was one of those moments that was a huge release, because it had been building. I can't remember what minute Chris Wood scored, but it was pretty close to the end, wasn't it? And it had just been building and building and building and building, and we had this sense that something was coming, and then he scored, and then all hell just breaks loose, and it was an absolute sea of limbs, as people would describe it. One of those really blurry photos that I very occasionally put out but just kind of encapsulated the mood in that moment perfectly.
I think this is my favourite one. There's two things I like about this one. I don't know if this is deliberate or stuff you notice, but there's like the generational aspect of it. So at the left-hand side, you've got the young lads all cheering, and then in front of them, you've got the old boy who looks about 80, cheering just as much, celebrating in his own way. And also, the City ground is actually in some ways a bit ramshackle, and you can see that with the Peter Taylor stand. And obviously, we're playing Man City. It's nothing like the Etihad, and it's nothing like. I mean, I do love the Emirates Stadium, and I'd love to go to the Spurs Stadium, but you don't get many grounds like the City ground. And this photo kind of encapsulates what's the City ground's about as well. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. No, I hear you. So obviously, we had to move seats last summer because of the move of the Seg line for the away fans, which at the time I was devastated because I got that beautiful seat just behind the goal in Lower Bridgeford. And we moved into Z Block. So, I need to say a big thank you to all of the new people that I was sat around or stood around that you can see in this photo, because they featured quite heavily this season. And they're all really great lads and guys and girls. And so, it was a huge thanks to them for putting up with my camera. And actually, I think in the end, we very quickly realised that Z Block was better. It was a better view. We loved being in the corner. We had a really great group of people around us that got involved with the atmosphere, and kind of felt like we found a really a good outcome from what originally felt like something that was going to ruin our match day experience. And you're right as well. It's just a great little corner of the ground, the old Peter Taylor stand side. And the other really good thing as well was what we kind of got going in Z Block then connected really well to A Block as well. So for years it felt like Lower Bridgeford and A Block were very disconnected, whereas now it's kind of joined as one, and the atmosphere got going even better. I wasn't always a huge fan of that big giant screen because it did cause a bit of lighting issues for some of my photos. but at the same time it did help out at times in the depths of winter as well. But I do like that photo and how blurry it is.
So we go from one Manchester club to the other. This is Man United at home. Is this the league game where we lost 2-0, or is it the cup game?
This is the league game, I think, if I've got things right. Because the cup game was night, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I thought we were pretty poor and really well beaten in that game. Why did you pick this photo out?
So it's another of my film shots, so that's partly why. But again, it kind of plays back to what we were just saying about you don't get this. Well, Old Trafford is a bit ramshackled in parts, but still, it doesn't look like this. This looks like a proper football ground. You've got the bit of the floodlights there, the side of the ground, the old wall, and I just because it's a film shot. You've got one chance that it comes out good. It's not like you've press the button and you've got 15 digital shots to pick through and find the right one. And this one, I've always loved it since I first saw it. The guy's just like right in, you can tell what he's doing. He's singing Mull of Kintyre, as is everyone around him. He's right into the game, and it's just that fever before every game at the City ground that kind of builds, and what Mull of Kintyre does really gets the crowd going. It felt like a big day, this one. We've done the display for the 50th anniversary of the club logo, which had been great. And you're right, I think we were well beaten on the day, and it felt like Man United were beating us very well every other week around this time of the year. But just a photo that I really love. Probably one of my top favourites of the season, because I think it just encapsulates what football is all about really nicely.
So the next one does that as well. It certainly encapsulates a moment. It's Villa away, a good ground, and a nice one to go to. I think we can all guess when this photo was taken. The moment in the game. This is after Villa have scored, is it?
Yeah, no, this is full time.
Okay.
I'd actually been stood right up at the back of the stand, and it had been pretty awful day for me to get photos. Not that that's why I'm going to games, but it does kind of play in my mind of like, I'm not really getting anything very good here. And because we were kind of in the end very soundly beaten, or comfortably beaten, I hadn't really got anything that great. And because I was right at the back, I'd kind of started to shuffle down to the front as full time approached. And then, the whistle went, and I actually got a couple of different shots of different people along this railing line. And it just encapsulated, I think, that we were all a bit deflated. For me, I think this was the only moment in the season where I thought, we're going to go down here. Because it just felt like we couldn't get anything going. We'd had some good performances that hadn't got results. Our away form was dreadful. We'd had, good chances with teams. We played teams around us at home, that Everton, Wolves, that we ended up drawing. We'd not got the wins. It just felt like we were letting too many opportunities slip by. And it just felt at the end of this game, and I guess this photo and this person, whoever it is, kind of summed it all up. And we were all a bit just like, this is probably too much for us now, and we couldn't really see how we were going to turn it around. And I think linking from the previous kind of two photos, the Man City one, the great exuberant scenes of having just scored a goal, and the Man United one of similar type scenes before a game where we're all excited. This is the real low of going to football of, another defeat. This is bad. We're getting a bit worried about getting relegated here.
I think I saw that game a bit differently to other people. I might be wrong now. I think it was the first game we had for quite a while where we had an away plan that looked tactically sound, and it was Shelby's monumental cock-up that killed it. And I thought we were right in that game, and I don't think Villa offered a lot. So I kind of came away from that one feeling a bit more hopeful. My low moment, like I said on the podcast the other week, was Leeds away, where we were absolute garbage for the last 70 minutes. And that's when I thought we were going down. But there was certainly plenty of moments where it looked grim, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think Leeds was almost more like fully accepting fate was probably what was going to be happening. With this one, I know what you mean. It did feel like we had a good plan, but I think we had other games where it felt like we'd had a good plan, but it wasn't quite working. And I think for this one, it was like, how many times are we going to kind of go into games where it feels like we have a plan, where we have a good 60 minutes, but it doesn't quite work because we're running out of games now. It's got to click and it's got to start working. And I think for me, it was just a worried feeling that it wasn't going to start clicking for us.
That kind of cascading doom made it all the sweeter in the end, though, didn't it? I guess. Brentford away, it was probably the last chapter where you thought they had it on the plate, and they really shot themselves in the foot there by hook or by crook. So to actually stay up again, it probably heightened the celebrations in a way.
Yeah, Brentford's another good one. That was a real low moment, but weirdly, I think because we'd had a couple of good results around that Brentford game, and I had a bit more of hope, and I was on a bit more of a high. And again, it was a really good performance, and it felt afterwards, it felt awful, like leaving the ground. And their fans are really weird, and I remember leaving. I was just like, real dejected about it. And it took me a day to kind of get over it. But then I was like, okay, right, we'll go again. We've still got good games ahead of us now to try and get something from. And the home form was so good, it still kept you having hope. But it was a real up and down season. And I think the book kind of captures that. Of you have this moment of like Liverpool at home, great result. We're beating a really massive, well-established Premier League club that has great players, and we beat them, and you're thinking, brilliant, okay, right, this is the start. And then you go to Arsenal and you get beat 5-0. And it was just constantly like this up and down nature of the season. And actually probably our best run was most importantly towards the end of the season, where we were actually getting the odd point away from home, consistently winning at home. And I guess the optimist, which I very much am, is you look how poor our away form was this season. We've only got to improve that by a few points, and we're comfortably mid-table, based on a replication of the home form, which probably won't get quite as good as those levels, but I think we'd get very similar. in terms of output in the stands and on the pitch. So, hope for next season.
I jumped the timeline slightly there because I did miss out one of the other pivotal. You mentioned the home games, obviously. Southampton at home. That was the most tense game of the season for me, even more so than the Arsenal game. Tell us about this photo.
Yeah. So this one, someone described to me as a Renaissance picture, which I'll take as a very, very kind compliment. But it's just the bodies everywhere, and the thing, people are looking in different directions and hugging people, and it was a hell of a night. I mean, up there with that Sheffield United playoff game in terms of being tense and the twists and turns as the game unfolded, and even right to the end, we're going from thinking we're 5-2 up, and then what was it, 10 minutes of injury time, and all of a sudden it's 4-3, and you're like, oh god, there's still 8 minutes of injury time. And so I just love this one for it managed to capture what a celebration is like and how it unfolds differently for people. And as I say, you hug random people next to you, or you're turning around. I just love the guy that's right at the back that's like climbing up the wall, gazing to the light. And just a great celebration, and a really important win for us on the night. I think that was a moment where we thought we really can do this now. It's in our hands. We'd got to the stage of the season where you're starting to look at the other teams and think, God, they really are awful. I mean, Leeds, we talked about that Leeds game, and I remember the lovely songs that they sing about us, and walking back to our cars afterwards, and they were all saying, laughing and saying, oh, you're going down. I mean, he who laughs last, and all that. But they looked shocking by this point of the season. So you're starting to think, well, Leeds are going to go, and then Everton and Leicester looked pretty shocking. And actually, we were in decent form. So I think this night was really important. We had to win it. Heaped pressure on the others. We did win. We got that huge relief. And it allowed us to really believe that, we can stay up here.
Yeah, I don't think I appreciated how crap Leeds, Leicester, Everton were until we'd stayed up. And then I think I viewed the games through a different lens, because I went into all those games like Leicester versus Liverpool at home thinking, oh, Leicester could win this because Liverpool aren't as good away. But then when you watch the games and you realise, actually, we're significantly better than them when we found a formula, which we had by then. But they were terrible.
I keep on looking back, and I remember going to games and we'd have this conversation, and I was adamant, the same as you, that we weren't that bad. Yeah, we were finding it tough because it's first season back in the Premier League and integration of all the players, and maybe
we had all the injuries as well.
Yeah, a lot of injuries, maybe a bit of naivety around some games as well. But I thought we were pretty good on the whole. You look at the game, the 38 games. How many were we dreadful in? Well, not that many. Even the ones where we were getting handsomely beaten at the start of the season, we hadn't quite got it right at that point. And we were playing Man City and we were playing Arsenal, who came first and second, and they're pretty spectacularly good teams. I don't think we were that bad. And I think what Leicester fans and Leeds fans and Southampton fans would say was, over the course of the season, they were dreadful pretty much throughout. So I think it was the right result in the end, obviously, because we're all Forest fans, so we wanted to stay up. But I do think it was the right result that we did stay up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I actually think Leicester were better than Everton, and really should have stayed up, but they blew it. But that's a conversation for a different football team and a different day. Last photo is the ultimate celebration then. Arsenal at home. I love this one. The fella in front, especially, who quite obviously looks like he's crying. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, well, I hope people don't mind me sharing this one, but I think it sums it up. There was another one. I did post this one at the time, and there was another one that I posted with a guy who stands next to me, who was in a similar state. And I think we all were. And someone, Shane, in fact, who gets mentioned on the podcast quite regularly, he commented to say, look at the emotion in people's eyes. And it is incredible that you don't think about this happening in the stand, and you might see it at the time, and I guess what I hope my photos are doing are helping people to relive all of these memories, because these kind of things pass you by in the moment and you don't realize quite what a state we were all in. And I know I was exactly the same as the two guys with the very red eyes. And it just captures as well this photo. You've got the guy who's clearly like exuberant, and we've just stayed up. This is amazing. And then at the other end of it, you've got the kind of like just the relief that's being shown as well. And just, yeah, another of the really like favorite photos of the season, because it's such a happy moment as well. I think that's the key. This book definitely wouldn't have happened if we'd gone down, because you don't have these wonderful happy moments to replay. But it was just a brilliant day as well, and I reference it in the book that it all came together in that moment. And I think it had to, like, if we'd gone to Palace, it wouldn't have been the same if we had stayed up. Yeah, there would have been huge relief. That game would have been horrendous. The tension and the kind of gut-wrenching feeling we'd all been going through. But I feel like it had to finish at home because of everything that had happened over the course of the season and the way that we had approached home games. Certainly, I mean, more so the fans, I think. I know that the players go out there and they give it their all home and away. And yeah, they were brilliant at home. But I think the home fans were incredible over the course of the season. I know it's been talked about loads and people have referenced the atmosphere and how incredible it is. And I do honestly believe that there's something in that. And I hate the concept of 12th man. I think it's one of the worst things in football. It would be on my bin list. But I think that the collective spirit and approach of the fans kept us up, because we really dug in when we had to dig in. There wasn't a home game, maybe aside from Bournemouth, because we'd all gone into it thinking, oh, we're going to beat Bournemouth because it's only Bournemouth. And there was a bit of angst at the end of that one. But aside from that, the spirit remained real kind of focused and steadfast and supportive. And I just think there's something to be said for positivity. And I know Steve Cooper referenced it, I think, after the Arsenal game in his interview with Colin Fray, talking about, in a world where everything's can very easily be negative, there's something to be said for positivity. And I agree with him. He's usually right, isn't he? I just think he's right. We pulled together a real positive spirit, and that's what helped us get over the line, or certainly played a big role in us getting over the line and staying up. And yeah, the Arsenal game was brilliant. I think I knew we were going to win that day, and I knew that Everton were going to have put us in a position by not beating Wolves, that if we did win, we were going to stay up, because it was just all written to be that way. It had to be a great win at home and allow us to all celebrate together and dance around on the pitch and everything else. And it was kind of like Wembley again, and maybe a bit better still. Slightly different, but a very similar kind of feeling, and just a brilliant way to end the season in terms of staying up.
Do you worry that positivity erodes over time as expectation and assumption grows that there'll be a lot more Bournemouth games? We might be playing obviously Luton, Sheffield United, Burnley, Palace, Brentford. We just think, oh well, we should beat these teams now, and that translates into the stands. Is that a worry for you?
Yeah, I'm in the Greg Mitchell positivity spirit of, will we qualifying for Europe next season? So obviously the positivity will maintain. I think so. Like, expectation changes, right? The season that's just finished, how far has our expectation jumped from the season, even the season previous when we were getting promoted? All of a sudden we've got, Man United, Newcastle, etc. coming to town. You kind of take away the real elite clubs, but a Man United and a Newcastle are coming to the City Ground, and we're like, well, we should win this because it's at the City Ground. Whereas 3 or 4 seasons ago, we've got no disrespect to Preston coming to the City Ground, and we're like, probably going to get beat, aren't we? So I think now we've stayed up, the expectation moves on another level again. And yeah, Luton, Sheffield United come to the City Ground next season, and we just think, well, this is a home banker because we're a more established Premier League club than them now, and even I think we'll start to have ideas of grandeur that our level is now. Brentford is now, Crystal Palace is now certainly like an Everton or Wolves, and so when those clubs are coming to the City Ground, we'll be thinking, well, we should win this because these are now clubs that are our level. So yeah, expectation will rise, and it could become more difficult. And I do think we've had a perfect blending of Steve Cooper factor, players, the performances on the pitch have married with a kind of a timing of home support, kind of really like kicking on and being very positive in spirit, as I've just mentioned. And those things, two things have blended together really nicely. And that will maybe fizzle out at some point. It may be more difficult to maintain it. I'd like to hope that, we would certainly go into the start of next season all buzzing still and thinking, let's keep this going. I'll give a shout out to Greg and to Matt and to everyone that's involved in Forza, because I think what they've done brilliantly is they've created a fans group that isn't about Crystal Palace, Leicester, etc. Have a group of 100 ultras that all wear, matching black t-shirts and bang a drum and sing in a corner together. And that's great, right? And I'm fully supportive of all clubs and all organisations and all people that try and do something about atmospheres and grounds. But I think what they do with those smaller groups is they create almost like a little clique of, we are the people that are going to sing and bang the drum. Whereas what Forza have done is kind of garnered this spirit of, we are all a group. This whole stadium is, united and together, and that means that we get 4 stands singing, not just 100 guys and girls in one stand. So I think they've played a really important part in creating what we've got at the City Ground, and I know that will continue, and more people want to get involved with helping with displays, and more and more people want to stand up and sing. And so let's just keep it going and be as positive as we can.
Yeah, I do. I just worry that atmosphere is going to erode over time, because I just think it's inevitable. But then, players shouldn't need that atmosphere to win games anyway, so they should still be able to deliver. But I think it just made it a bit more special. How often did you hear commentators? Obviously, you were at the games more than me, but you'd hear commentators just be quiet and just listen to the noise, which you don't get at other grounds, because it's got that soul, I think, as well. And obviously, the fans were so brilliant. So, yeah, I think that's probably what made this season special as well. I think the fans put Forest back on the map to a greater degree than Fulham and Bournemouth.
Yeah.
They're not noisy clubs anyway, are they? I like a Fulham away day, but it's not a football day in a way, is it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that pundits will reference the noise at the City Ground as clubs that get promoted need to replicate what the Forest fans did at the City Ground. I think hats off to all of us for the atmosphere that we created, because, as I said, I genuinely think it had an impact and helped us stay up. And I do think it will become a thing now, where when you're doing the season previews, it'll be, well, if Sheffield United can generate the kind of atmosphere at Bramall Lane that Forest did at the City Ground, they might have a chance. So it is really important, and I do agree with what you say about it constantly being referenced, and I think it will be a thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think it actually gives Luton more of a chance than Sheffield United, because when did you last go to Kenilworth Road?
The promotion
season.
Of
course, yeah. It's a good atmosphere though, isn't it? They're quite hostile in a way.
Yeah. For us, small grounds can often be the noisier ones.
Yeah,
and I think they'll enjoy next season.
I think they'll get relegated, but they'll have a go. I think they'll have a go. Right, I think we'll leave it there. We've gone through all the photos, great stuff, of course. Just remind us how people can get hold of a copy, Simon.
So if you head to the Forza Garibaldi website, and there's a little shop tab at the top of the screen, click on that, and then you'll find the book there, or head to Forza Garibaldi or Our Glorious Banners on social media, and you're very quickly and easily find the link, and you can just click on that and it'll take you straight through to buy the book. 1865 is the price, includes postage and packaging. They're being printed early July and will then be with people hopefully by the middle of July.
Yeah, great. I should have plugged our podcast Twitter account ages ago for people who listen to this. It's Garibaldi Red _, so you probably have to just flick through the photos. I'll have timestamps them as well by the time you listen to this as well. Right. Thanks to everyone who listened along, watched along, very much appreciated. Hopefully see some of you at the live shows, which are this week. So do come along, say hello if you're there. It'd be great to see as many people as possible. Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Good luck with the book, and have a good few days, everyone, and we shall see you soon.